What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Now, you know our position here is that it's much, much easier to score in the NBA than it was even 5, 6 years ago, let alone during Kobe's prime 10, 15 years ago. And don't even get me started about the late 90s. It's just much easier to score. The Chicago Bulls defeat the Utah Jazz in 6 games back in 1998, while the team only averaged 88 points a game. They only averaged 88 points a game. They beat them in 6 because the Utah Jazz, I think, only averaged 86 points per game in that series, if I'm not mistaken. So that's because it was just much more difficult. It was a different style of basketball with different rules. And the biggest difference is the defensive rules. Players were allowed to be more physical. Defensive players had more leeway. Perimeter players and post players on defense. So both post defenders and perimeter defenders have become handicapped, increasingly so, to the point where scoring is at an all-time high. I think there have been like 20 or close to 20 50-point performances this year. Back in 1998, there were only 3. One by Karl Malone, one by Tracy McGrady, and one by Shaq. In 99, the 50-game schedule, there were none. So the game has changed. And we've brought up a bunch of different examples and point out different facts to lend credence to the idea that it's so much easier to score. But let's look at Kevin Durant. Now, Kevin Durant is still scoring at a very high rate. He's in his, 17th NBA season, I believe. And he's playing at a very high level, and kudos to him. Now, these players are coming into the NBA at an earlier age, but by the same token, you could also make the observation that if the game isn't easier, then that means that they should be putting more wear and tear on their bodies earlier, right? If the game isn't easier, then they should be logging in more wear and tear earlier. That doesn't seem to be the case. Matter of fact, some of the top players, some of the top players in the NBA are some of the oldest players. LeBron James is arguably, I would say, a top 12 to 13 player still. Curry is still a top player. Kevin Durant is still a top player. That's odd. To still have guys this late in their careers playing at this level. Especially when it comes to Kevin Durant, because this is a man that suffered an Achilles rupture. Now remember, at one point in time, an Achilles rupture was almost pretty much the end of your career. Or at the very least, you would never be the same player ever again. So with medical advancements, yes, guys are coming back and playing better. Dominique Wilkins was an outlier, of course. But even with Dominique Wilkins, when he came back from the Achilles rupture in 92, 93, and he had that tremendous year, you still saw, because of his age, I think at the time he was 30, I think he was 31 or 32 when he ruptured his Achilles. I think he was 32. You still saw that natural decline in his performance after like 1994. Kevin Durant, sometimes I forget how old he is. What is he, like 35? 35. And you look at this graph, and he's actually putting up better numbers. This is unheard of. You'll never find another player who, after a traumatic injury such as an Achilles rupture, is putting up better numbers than he did before the injury. Better numbers. Before the Achilles rupture, Kevin Durant, 27 points a game, 7.1 rebounds, 4.1 assists, 49.3% overall shooting, which was phenomenal. 38.1% from the charity stripe. From the three-point line. Great, great numbers. Since these injuries, since basically 2021, when he's been in his years that are considered not prime, 28.4 points, 7 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 53.4% shooting from the floor, and 41.2% from three-point range. Now, of course, someone can bring up, well, what about Klay Thompson? Everybody's not the same. Everybody doesn't age differently. But Klay, in addition to the Achilles rupture, had the ACL injury back-to-back. And the fact that he was able to come back from that and still be a somewhat effective player is a testament to how much easier it is to play in the NBA. Because the Achilles rupture, now granted, medical advancements is part of it. But man, in the old NBA, when you had to rely on having lateral quickness and it was based more on physical movements and quickness, man, having injuries to your knees or legs or ligaments really set you back. You know what I'm saying? The fact that these guys are able to come back, a lot of it is because of advancements, but a lot of it got to do with the fact that it's just easier to score today, man. Some of it, just let's be honest. It's easier to score in today's NBA. And this is part of it. Anyway, tell me what you guys think.